I don't know how popular this is anymore, but when I was starting off and moving into data science, there was a real focus on these first two roles, this A and B type data science. So the A stands for analyst, and you can think of it as like an extension of a data analyst, but with more automation, more experimentation, more of the science put into it. So think of it, I always thought of this type A as like some sort of extreme analyst, where they are just really, really, really good with the analytics and they just blitz everyone. But then they kind of pick up more and more skills. Maybe they do some machine learning, a little bit of things to do some exploration. Maybe they look at some clustering, things like that, where you can kind of really scale up the sort of analytics that you're doing. This is what the type A data science person is looking at. Now, if we move on to this type B, B stands for builder. In this case, usually they're the ones who are building the automated machine learning frameworks. Maybe they look into packaging up some of the analysis and the models into full-blown Python or R packages, so then they can share it across the rest of the team. Sometimes, or not sometimes, nearly all of the times, they come from a strong software experience background. So these guys will be very good with the Git. They'll be very, very good at R or Python, maybe both. And these guys are they're the guys that you go after when you need to automate something fully, really get it into production. And the last type, I thought about it and this came to me only recently. But nowadays, there's also a third type of data scientist, which is, I'm going to call it the consultant data science person. But think of them as they're more business focused, very, very business focused, to the point where they'll start managing projects. They start to figure out how to integrate some of the machine learning solutions into upstream and downstream systems. So for example, let's say you build a really, really good model, but you need to somehow get that model into the system so then it can actually recommend something to some customer on the app that they're using for Audible, for example. So you kind of need those types of, it's almost like a really, really solid BA, a business analyst, where they have a really good understanding of all the systems, all the different stakeholders and the different parties that have a stake in whether this project works or not. And then they just kind of work with all of them to try and figure out what's the best way ahead. And what we see is usually these C types, usually we see them in management. So they are more consider like your chief data scientist, or maybe the lead data scientist who is more on a business side that has to try and win business. And they also have a really large sales function. Most of the data science teams that we see in larger organizations, they kind of work like a mini consulting team, where you usually have someone who's out there trying to win projects or win some funding from different business stakeholders. And they kind of need to give them some business estimates on how the project is going to go, what sort of returns they're looking to get, and then also try and manage the project so they can deliver it successfully. So it's quite a challenging role, but in my mind, those are the three different types of data science. The A and the B are very well established, and I think a lot of people have written about it. The C is something I kind of just made up on my own based off my experiences, so I'm not sure if it's true, but I think it's an interesting way to look at things. I've also put the A, B, and C onto the Venn diagram just to give you a flavor of where I think the different areas kind of overlap. So you can see now that the builder, or let's start with the analyst type. So the analyst type is on this side. And you can see that there's more intersection between the statistics and the business side as opposed to the software engineering side. So there's a lot more focus on what are the insights, what actions are they driving, how do we know that it's right? All of these sorts of questions are what they answer. Now, if we look at the B side, so the builder side, you can see that they're very much in the software area, where they're expected to be pretty much full-on software engineers, where they can kind of look into different APIs, put things into production, and run like a full software control cycle sort of approach for any of their projects. And if we look at the C is coming in directly from the business. So you can imagine what sort of focus that they have. And the last question here that I've got is, what is a unicorn in terms of a unicorn data scientist? So a few different people have weighed in on this, but my view is just someone who's just maxed out their stats in every single component of this analyst, builder, and consultant. I think you can only really get to that stage through a lot of experience and time doing each of those things. Personally, for me, I don't consider myself a unicorn at all. I pretty much started off as a data analyst, and then I kind of moved through the different stages or the ABCs of data science. And at the moment, I'd say I'm more of in the builder type area. So I think it's pretty interesting to try and find out where people have built up their career in data science and try and figure out what type of data scientist they are.